Uh, First of all, I'd like to start by congratulating Neeraj. Neeraj, you know, heartiest
Thank you, Ivan.
congratulations. Yeah, it's such a phenomenal piece of art that you've put out, and I read somewhere that when novels are being judged for prizes, they often know within the first few paragraphs that this is the winner, and I think that was the case with Geeli Pucchi. Within the first few frames, I knew this was a very special. This was going to be a very special film. Just talking about the the crew, the kind of diverse crew that you put together for this, especially people from the marginalized community, from the Dalit community, from the Adivasi community. Um, why was that representation sort of important for you, and what kind of response did you get?
Actually, Ivan, this goes back to there's one thing that I saw where the concept of inclusion rider that goes in Hollywood, and I try to see a parallel here where we do not have enough representation. Forget any of the marginalized identities. I think it's also even women are not well represented. There is a skew even in terms of managerial positions. Uh, light and camera, and I can understand a bit of why it's not there, but even in production or direction, two things for me. One is that I think diversity brings in creativity because you get in a pool of various talents, various inputs from various people, and that goes in and that brings in a new flavor. Secondly, I feel uh, we have such vast majority of people, and there's so many kinds of communities and so many different marginalized identities who've never got their due. And we as an industry um, are quite lopsided in terms of representation. Uh, just to give you an example, like I was just reading up and I found out that uh, the number of black artists in America, be it singers, songwriters, any of them, you can name 100 right now, all through history. And black American population is about 13% in America. Now, if you look at over here in Hindi film industry, there have been handful of films that have been made on, say, for Dalit discourse or queer discourse,
Yeah.
and even they have been made by privileged caste members,
Yeah.
and the population is about 25%.
Mm.
So it is so majorly skewed that no amount of reparation is enough, and it had to start yesterday. But we are still here. So my intent was also to that extent of what I keep saying about whenever you're speaking about a certain marginalized identity in a film, I'm okay with people from various backgrounds making it, but I'm just hoping that there'll be some representation in terms of people being called in from various communities, hear out their lived experiences, put that into your narrative, put that in your development, put that in while you're making it. And it's essential to bring in people at key positions from the communities to enhance your narrative. Because, see, I mean, I'm making a film with women.
Yes.
No matter how much I try, I won't be able to fully understand or fully empathize with what women go through. So I had to bring in experiences of women and in from a gendered and from a caste perspective, and that was the whole idea to bring in representation. And it shouldn't come from place of, oh, I want to be woke and be bring in a lot of representation. It should come from a place of deep empathy, and most importantly, I feel it should come from a place of being educated and bringing in change, because it can't be that I'll read 100 books and I'll bring that in. No, you have to listen, hear them out, bring it into the fold. Uh, don't come from a patronizing point of view that I am going to come in and save you. That savior complex ought to go. That's how the whole sort of thing happened.
Yeah.
Uh, and I saw Meel Patthar, and I was so much in love with it, and it kind of like uh, took me into a world that suddenly uh, you're in this very Dardinesque world, and yeah, and it almost like made me so happy that it felt like it reminded me of La Promesse, the same, the truck and the man and the boy. It kind of, it really gave me those images, and I was so moved by it and the way it goes on. I mean, there's lots that I want to talk about it, but I don't know how to structure it in a way that. But I just want to, firstly, I mean, for me, it felt like this is. Um, I think the loss of, how would I say, the how you feel. Uh, you're like sort of dangling on the dead end branch of evolution, and you're like out on the, you're facing obsolescence, and then how you want to, um, finding your place in the earth, or in this country,
Yeah.
and finding yourself obsolete is a thing that it something that you can't bear.
Yeah.
And um, interestingly, what I also saw the way was that how Ghalib is so Sisyphusian, like as if Sisyphus took a break and realized that my back is hurting, but I still have to climb the mountain up. I don't know. I mean, I sort of saw it that way, and it really uh, touched something deep inside me, in the sense that how it went about it. How did you actually go about, um, bringing the story together? Where what's its genesis, and how you built it through to the point of filming it?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your kind words. The idea was actually just born out of curiosity. I have some extended family who were at one point in their lives truck drivers and then went on to become transporters.
Wow.
So I'd heard just stories and anecdotes from them, and uh, the the idea of this kind of occupation, like just the 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 imagined sort of life. I mean, because I'd never kind of accompanied them on their journeys, or I'd never really even seen them, go through their day to day. So it was mostly like an imaginary sort of viewpoint. Um, so I just would imagine that there's this one guy who travels and travels and travels, and perhaps is the most well traveled person, or one of the most well traveled people, but kind of stuck in just this one tiny little space and viewing things from that point of view. So, and, which was kind of ironic that, moving places, but kind of being stationary and stuck in life, stuck in sort of this one physical space also, but also kind of maybe perhaps stuck in some psychological space as well. Over time, you kind of can tend to become detached and stuck, and you see things from that point of view, which I thought kind of could be an interesting thing to explore, because that's how I see modern life becoming. We're all kind of stuck in our own box, and
Basically, going everywhere but belonging nowhere.
belonging nowhere, and perhaps not even trying to not even trying to belong to some place. I mean, we're all sort of now with the smartphones and all of that. It's like we're all kind of stuck in that one. We formed bubbles,
Yeah.
protective bubbles around us, and we're kind of becoming detached in that respect. So the idea was simply just to kind of start off with this person who has spent his entire life doing this one thing, and then suddenly realizes that it was now it's time to move on, or it's not even he's not decided. He's being asked that, okay, the party's over now, or not, the party's over. The party's still going to go on, but you're not part of it.
Yeah.
So you may leave. So that's so
It sort
just
of gave me that very personal connection, because one of my favorite, I think it's my favorite song of all time, is from this film called Namkeen, Raah Pe Rehte Hain. I don't know if you've ever seen Namkeen, this film by Gulzar. You must watch it. It's going to, you're going to find a lot of solace watching it, because it took me back to that time when I really, and it has thematically, it's so much similar to that film, because um, even there is this point of, ennui that sort of sets in this constant travel, which for us, it could be so invigorating. It could be like, oh wow, travel all over the world, but all over the country. But
Yeah.
for some, it just means job, and it means that you don't know what to do, and you're just going on and on. Um, that really kind of uh, moved me a lot. And also, sorry to digress a little. I just want you to come
No,
in on
no,
that one.
please. Yeah.
I was just very intrigued. I'm sure you got this question a lot of times about, is there a commentary on art with respect to naming your characters as Ghalib and Pash, sort of being from different generations of poets, and how in the film Ghalib and Pash sort of are from a different generation and also inheriting literally the pain of, and how most art is also born out of pain, born out of subjugation. And I just want you to want to know from you, is there like a commentary there?
Yeah, there was certainly there was certainly that idea that these two characters, different generations, going through and witnessing kind of like the system collapsing in front of their eyes. It's the part of this capitalistic system that in fact they're really the backbone of the modern capitalistic system. That's what I see truck drivers as. But they're also like the biggest sort of victims of it. So so they're seeing this sort of slow, almost like a demise of this entire system that's around them. The company is crumbling. Perhaps you see the physical spaces also. That's why I chose certain physical spaces to look like they're almost ruins. They're like they resemble ruins.
Yeah.
So Ghalib, I'm sure in his life saw the downfall of kind of like the Mughal Empire. So he was kind of witnessing ruins in front of him, and thereby wrote an incredible amount of poetry about life and existence in general. But that was the initial thought in the first few drafts of the film, but I kind of chucked it because it thought like it would be kind of very heavy-handed and perhaps even a little hollow. So what I decided was that I'm going to keep the names. I like the names, but I'm just not going to. I'm not going to have any references to these names. Nobody's going to point them out, or nobody's going to point out that they're namesakes of great poets. So we're not going to have that
There's no
conversation
allusion
because
to any of it.
exactly, and that was because of this very cynical point of view that these names don't matter anymore. Um, you know, even if they were writing poetry in the film, it wouldn't matter. Just like the poetry that was written by the two greats probably doesn't even matter today. I mean, there were people on the set who had never heard of them. so I mean, it was a very pessimistic sort of point of view, but I still decided to stick to it. And but thank you for finding so many layers in that in this narrative, because I must say that Geeli Pucchi itself has so many layers, and kind of there's caste, there's class, there's sexuality, and it doesn't feel kind of formulaic at all. I mean, it's just so seamlessly kind of if blending. One is kind of transitioning into the other and crisscrossing, and just you start with one, you flow into the other, and then you come back. So it was really amazing to watch how I mean, I'm interested how you actually went about writing it, and how much time it took you to kind of just finally come up with that. Okay, this is going to be the form. This is going to be how I'm going to be directing it, and perhaps just walk us through the process, please.
Well, actually, the idea came way back when I was when me and Varun Grover were jamming on Masaan.
Okay.
This subplot, it was like a subplot that I'd come up with, which at this point instantly, it felt like it doesn't go well with the world of Masan. It sort of is, it needs its own narrative, and Masan had a different theme,
Yeah.
and it just felt like thematically incongruous. And of course, I dropped it. It was a no-brainer. But then I persisted. I mean, that story came back to me over and over, and once of a while, even I wrote a draft. It had 2 pages of it. But then I never pursued it. And in fact, even so when Dharma and Netflix came on board, I mean, thanks to Somen Mishra, who's really pushed this forward, and Karan and Apurva, they really like handheld me into this thing. Then they said, you can make the way you want it. And Shrishti, Arya from Netflix, they all, it was so humbling to know that, for a moment, I could not believe that they actually want to do this film. And I had written a 2 page synopsis of it, and I pitched it to them. They were gung ho about it, and I thought, okay, I can't find a better place to actually make this, and that's when I got on. Like I wrote some bit of it, and then I got on co-writer Sumit Saxena. Now it was very interesting to see how, because we have sort of different, uh, worldviews, and that helped. Not worldviews, I'd say, writing techniques or the way our emotionality kind of comes off across. So I like to have that. So I thought that it'll be a good mix, and we jammed a lot more than we wrote. I think we endlessly spoke a lot about various themes, and how it was quite the process of. Then actually, the idea of intersectionality, I'd say that it comes more from, in our own lives, actually, we live so many identities. I mean, I'm a brother, I'm a director, I'm a writer, I am many identities. And at the same time, your identities are also driven by societal understanding, or segregation uh, of how that happens in society.
Yeah.
Also, how the state identifies you
Yes.
as a political identity. So I think we live all these, and I feel that none of these, these subalterns are a monolith. They're not like we. All of them live in conjunction, and they're very symbiotic in relationship. You know, for instance, like right now, I may have some privilege in terms of my films that I've made, and sort of gained some bit of respect in the industry. But then I'm sort of marginalized by my identity. You know, uh,
Yeah.
like some. So I think there is so much of combination of class, of caste, and sexuality. All of these things were, and then I wanted to take up the challenge of having this very complex layering. And the I mean, you understand it, how difficult it would be, because you want to do good by a particular community, and inadvertently you end up probably not putting the other community in a good place.
Yeah.
So it's going to be always that thing. And I wanted to have divided opinion. I wanted
Hmm.
to for people to feel that it's not negative, it's not black, it's not white, evil. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
And people just navigate their lives going through their own things. And it could be that, so for me, this whole idea also was from how we present antagonists in a film, in at
Yeah.
least Hindi cinema. uh, there are no shades to them. There is no contextualizing to their villainy. There's no probing into how do people come to become to face evil, or to see that, okay, this is the point where I want to do something that is morally not in line with what I think, but I'm still going to do it because I cannot take it anymore. You know?
Right. But then the when you're tackling kind of like these really complicated, I shouldn't say complicated issues, and they're mostly made complicated by the community, by the society. I don't think there's, I mean, there's the, there are solutions that would actually get the complication out, but I guess for political reasons, people just want these issues to remain complicated. But when you're talking about a community and there are people, uh, actors especially, who are representing that community, it, are there any uncomfortable conversations there?
Oh yes, I see what you mean. In fact, I've got this a lot on expectedly so from a lot of people asking me that, basically the idea being that, a subaltern represents a subaltern on cinema, the way it's happening in Hollywood. Okay. Uh, but the thing is that, I find it, I mean, that's my hope. That's my dream that someday we will have, like a Dalit representing a Dalit character in a film, or a queer person representing, which is happening already. But the point to understand is that we cannot equate to what's happening in America to what's happening in India. I mean, we're literally, I think, a millennia away from what they're doing and the kind of representation that they've come up to. We are at a point we don't even have people. Forget like,
Yeah,
represent. We don't even have people.
yeah,
Like the discrimination is the secondary part, but we don't even have people to have a context to it. Now, imagine the complexity of it that I can't go and ask a person, are you from a Dalit background? Are you
yeah,
queer? How do
yeah.
I ask? It's
How
so
do you
difficult to
ask?
even ask. And let's say even if you ask, will they acknowledge it?
Yeah,
Then if they acknowledge it, do they fit the part? Do they have the talent to make the audition well? So
yeah,
for me, those things are so crucial. So I think in the larger interest of making a point across, you do these battles where you kill some of your own endeavors and your dreams, and because you want to see the larger picture, stick with the larger picture. Like the same way that there is a bit of an sort of polemic, or like an expositional thing right at the start where we explain what is
yeah,
caste. Like we verbalize it, because I do understand that most of Netflix audience from various countries, from 200 countries, they may not understand what is caste. But in India, the asking of the last name almost alludes to it. But that is so
yes,
subtle and nuanced that even in maybe some places people won't understand. In Bombay, people won't understand.
yes. No, it's. I completely understand what you're saying. It's it is not as, I mean, even though we'd like to draw parallels with what is happening in America or Hollywood, but there's just it just doesn't. It's not that easy. You cannot draw those parallels here because like caste is that kind of like silent way of discriminating. I mean, people who know, they know. Otherwise, there's just no way to know, and it's kind of like, you know, ultimately that's what we're hoping to achieve. That there's they when people just come in for auditions, we just don't even know who they are. I mean, we're just casting them because they're performing well and we are liking their work, and so those uh, just like
So race is physical and caste
yeah.
is so internal. So
Is exactly, and so is to some extent religion. I mean, when we are kind of pointing fingers at one religion or the other religion, but then when we are looking at performances, we almost forget. I mean, I think up until recently, we never cared. I mean, who our favorite actors or directors or music directors or singers were. I mean, they were just our favorite artists. I mean, so religion never really came into picture, and I hope caste wouldn't either at some point. I mean, at least so far, I'm sure in your work and my work, it hasn't come in, but maybe there are people who are very finicky about that stuff or very particular about that stuff. But anyways, I mean, it's just something I thought,
actually, about I was trying to revisit Sony. By the way, like one of your actors, Vikas Shukla, even I worked with him on Sacred Games too,
uh-huh.
from Sony. So I actually was quite intrigued by your sort of, is it an autorial kind of a mark that you want to create, in the sense like, is it sort of a signature style that you have where it's almost handheld, sorry, it's almost Steadicam and handheld together, and it's always these long takes, and which is even more so in Meel Patthar. And you refuse to do the refuse to cut a scene for the take of, how we do that. You have to have a close shot, mid shot. You're going with the flow, and it so felt organic, and it felt like you're there. And both your films have that language. Is that a conscious choice that you have, or is it something that you um, just, what do you think about it? Like, what do you have to say about that?
No, it was a conscious choice in the first one because I felt that I wanted to kind of share my experiences of being in those spaces as accurately as possible with the audiences. I almost kind of like, when I was accompanying, say, a policeman to, say, some location, I mean, there was almost like 3 to 4 weeks of just kind of getting to know them in Delhi, visiting various police thanas and different areas, the beats, and even like the PCRs, and just following them, and how they actually go about their daily duties and things like that. So it almost felt like I was like that fly on the wall and just observing things, and
Very documentary, and sort of give it a more,
yeah,
be there, fly on the wall. Yeah.
yeah. But here I was, because there was the characters are where I kind of start my story, and everything in the film is kind of explored through that character's perspective. And so I thought, okay, we'll just follow the character and just kind of explore that, the 360 of that space through that, through their point of view. It's almost like inviting the audiences to kind of step into their shoes, and then perhaps living a little bit of it, and making their own judgment whether in a particular situation, whether the character would have done it differently. I mean, that was the idea in Soni. This is not necessarily, doesn't necessarily apply to me, Meel Patthar, my Milestone. But the that I enjoyed it so much. I knew I was taking a big risk. Many people try to talk me out of it, even up until like until like first day of shoot. Even when we had shot like I think 2 or 3 days, my producers and even some of the ADs, do you want to try something different now? And I was like, no, we'll just keep going. I'm really enjoying it. I can see how nervous the actors are. I think it's making me very happy, that they're on their toes all the time. And, there's this tension. I mean, there's this tension that you create in the scene, which I think it's very hard because that if you screw up, like at minute 5 or minute 6, and it's like an 8-minute or a 7-minute thing, you're going all the way back, and we've done 20 takes already. But I mean, it's all good, but yes, you must be very, very confident about your blocking. You have to be very, very confident about the way you're exploring the space. Otherwise, it can all fall apart very easily. And perhaps in 1 or 2 scenes in Soni, I when I go back and look at it now, I feel that maybe this was probably too much here. I mean, maybe I could have done away with this technique for this particular scene. Maybe I could have done a close up here. And that's what, of course, those are some of the things you learn. And then for the second one, I knew that I did not want to give it the same treatment as the first one, because then I felt that would be unfair to both films. So this one felt like more meditative, more kind of sort of that reflective sort of tones, and solitude was kind of more pronounced in this one. And so to kind of connect with that character, I decided, all right, I'm going to do it for the scenes where I feel I'm going to enjoy it. but then for everything else, I'm going to cut where I feel like I'm going to cut. So here we did not really follow that strictly. So there were moments
I'm
when,
actually quite envious of you being able to do this, man, because I mean, it's such a. I mean, every director would want to do such a thing where you can just keep a take for as long as you want and don't have the pressure to cut it. It's so beautiful, and I envy that, in some ways, because I've been also quite a sucker for long takes.
yeah, yeah.
Renata being one of my favorite filmmakers, so you can imagine the long takes. And so I with this, I also. Uh, envy one more thing, the one that you just mentioned a while back about um, how did you get there so fast for a second film? I'm grappling with it, man, and I don't know how to handle it. How did you end up making a second film so fast? And here I am, still not made a second film. It's been so many years.
Okay, well, so I did not know that it was going to happen that fast, but what happened was I felt like, okay, this is so the script for Milestone was something I had kind of like I had almost ready at around the same time as Soni, maybe just right after I'd shot Soni. So this was something I was working on, uh, while I was still in the US, and I'd written the film for North America, somewhere in North America, because that's where kind of like our community dominates the trucking business. So and I also felt that those spaces are very scary almost. I mean, the trucks are probably 3 times the size of the trucks over here. And the life is quite different. So, I mean, that was, and I still thought that I would do that at some point, just go back and try to get the film made there. But I think something changed, when I was kind of slowly absorbing just the release of Soni and just watching it with the audiences. And just, I felt that I was more comfortable with kind of making films here. And then I had the script. So it was a very impulsive decision to kind of just adapt the script for India, but keeping some of the themes that the fact that he comes from Punjab and he lives in New Delhi. So sort of that being away from home and not knowing exactly where you belong. And of course, Delhi being Delhi, Delhi is as cosmopolitan as a city can get. I mean, there are people from all over the country. So some of the themes that I thought that I would kind of include in the narrative, I was able to include. It was just a matter of, okay, now I'd like to do some location scouting and just see where the film can be shot. And then we found this place called Sanjay Gandhi Transport Nagar, which is in the outskirts of Delhi, and happens to be the biggest transportation zone in Asia, I believe. That space actually really, I think it attracted me greatly. I think that's when I kind of just started writing the adapting the script as fast as possible.
You must came from location, basically.
So yeah, I mean, as soon as I started looking at the location, started talking to people, there was something that triggered the whole kind of process. So immediately before we knew it, we went into pre-production. All right, I'm putting the two together. All right, doing this and that, blah blah. But I mean, since you mentioned that you're still thinking about that second film, I should say that you've had such eclectic experiences, having made an iconic film like Masaan, then making and being part of this iconic show, taking games, then making being part of making probably one of the best short films I have seen in recent times, Geeli Pucchi. So you must share with us what's kind of like how one kind of transition into the other, and then what have you enjoyed all of them equally, and if yes, Why? If not, why not?
Actually, I think Ivan, like the way, I mean, we all grow. For instance, a same film that I think you watch every year once, and then you realize that you take away from it differently every year. I think the same way, I think we also grow through our choices, grow through our. So I actually have been like, at the time of Masaan, I was this very cinema purist, was like quite a snob in the sense like I'm not going to look at TV shows. Excuse me, it's going to take my time away. I'm going to think only in terms of I have to think 2 hours. I can't think 7 hours. I was quite this, but then I slowly opened up to the world of TV shows, and then I got suckered into it. Then I became obsessed with crime, crime shows. Okay, I've literally seen every Brit crime show that has come out. Okay, and also in America, and also now even Scandinavian also exhausted. So I don't know where else to go now. Something about it is it's like my comfort food, and it came from there. But then it wasn't a thing that I want to do something eclectic. I think where it came from was more because I was literally um, I suffered through a lot about not making the second film. I mean, so much so that I had to sought therapy. I could not. I mean, I was the only enemy that I had. There was
Yeah.
everybody wanted to make films with me. Everybody had two scripts to offer. All studios lining up, but it was just I don't know what happened to me that I just could not, and it became a little bit of I became a recluse. I could meet people, I could call people, I could speak to them. I used to flee parties because I just could not. I don't know, and it came to a point where even like not taking praise from Masan because it was like it reminded me that you haven't made a second film, and I would run away from it. Even those
Mm.
things happened to me, and so Vikram and Anurag, and Varun, they told me that listen, you have to get out of your house, you have to do something. And they said, we've made this show, why don't you watch it, and if you're interested, you can be part of it. And I went and saw it at the edit, and I really liked it because even though I was not that clued in with the world that much, like but what moved me was the human side of it. It was so interesting to see, and Vikram wanted me to do that part of with Seth's track where, and I thought, why not? I mean, it gives me a chance to like really explore
Yeah.
something, and I tried to do something like again the fancy for a single shot, which we did one chase sequence where it was not just running in the street, but also climbing up uh, four
Yeah.
stories and then on the terrace, and then it comes down and all in a single take.
Yes.
So those kind of things that I did, I really, really enjoyed doing it. And Saif is a sweetheart to work with. So that was there. And then short films are my I'm way more attached to short films than feature
Okay.
films because they give you such democratic space to make what you really want to make. And you don't have to think about commercial pressures. You don't have to think about casting someone in that way. Um, for me, it really is liberating because it really allows me to be and to express exactly the way I want. And I feel it is more personal uh, than a cinematic, than making films or TV shows because there is some bit of a thing. So then again, Made in Heaven is something that again I really admire
Yeah.
Zoya as a craftsman, and I thought I want to be part of something that she does, and that's where that thing came in that and also I love the show because I think it's by far the best show in India that really, really gets inclusivity. It gets, how do we bring in representation?
Yeah.
And it's not on the nose. It's got so much of so and also so much of craftsmanship that is there on the
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
and I had to be aligning to it.
Yeah.
So that's where I have been, and another um, also being feminist myself, and sort of really look up to Zoya as a. I mean, I learn a lot from her feminism. Like for instance, like people keep bracketing her as this female filmmaker, and I hate it. It's
Yeah.
like she's so super at her craft. Can we just like admit that she's one of the top four best directors in the country and not genderize her?
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, also about like generally talking about gender as such, I actually quite intrigued by the way you look at women in your films. Okay.
Hmm.
I have slight envy here because my women, I mean, I make them speak it out. I gave them, they're fairly expressive. They're fairly, this thing. But what I observe is that even in Soni, or I mean, this could be just my observation, but it may not be design, and in Meel Patthar both, your women are so interesting to see, and you do not make a statement about it. Like they are occupying rather androgynous roles, or say careers and roles which are predominantly you see men doing it, be it being cops, or being the sarpanch head, or being the puncher lady. And I found it, and also expressing agency like the sister of the dead wife, how she is persisting on saying that, I mean, I want a certain kind of autonomy, and I want this. I won't accept to this price that he's giving me. I really want to know from you, like, where does it all come from, and is it by design, or how does it go?
Well, again, thank you for your kind words. I've never really made a conscious effort of doing that because I think my interaction, I mean, always been in awe of certain people in my life, and they've all happened to be women. I mean, I was brought up by, so I have a younger brother, and we were two kids brought up by a mother who was mostly alone, working 9 to 5, not well, not 9 to 5, maybe a 7 to 3 kind of job. She's a school teacher, uh, and my father, working for the government of India, used to travel a lot all over the country, and so my mother was most of the time the only one take care of things. And and I happened to have studied at the same school where she taught. So I saw, kind of like the, how afraid people were of her, and as afraid as we were at home. So I mean, and there was, and it was only because of like personality. I mean, nobody really thought, okay, this is like a woman teacher, or we're afraid of this lady because she's a woman. We have to be careful with what we say. No, I mean, as when you're growing up, I mean, you're just in awe of certain people. So I think that probably it comes, subconsciously it comes from there. And then, of course, I have my wife to thank. I mean, she's basically the head of the household. She takes care of everything. I mean, and and uh, and then, of course, certain people in my family who have inspired me to kind of do what I do today, and and role models essentially. So a lot of the role models in my life have been women, and that's because I've never
Breaking the
really.
binary, was it like a conscious thing? Like breaking the binary, was it, you're like, the women are also like very androgynous, and they're doing something that you don't expect them to do, or at least have not seen it.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
so to that point, when we were researching for Sony, so
mm,
just going to thanas and just meeting policemen and policewomen, there was that kind of there was this preconceived notion that we're only going to see maybe one lady cop in like this police station, but that was not the case either. I mean, when they were, it was very kind of, it was very organic. I mean, the way the policewomen and the policemen work when they're in uniform, they're all kind of, okay, can you please pass me this? Can you please look at this file? When they're chatting, I mean, there was absolutely uh, the gender was absent. In the police thana, the gender was absent. When somebody was bringing in somebody, okay, I caught this person, blah, blah. Can you please make him sit there, or I'm going to deal with her or him later, or whether resolving a conflict. It was basically everybody doing it together. I didn't really notice. It was mostly how the kind of uh, civilians were treating a policeman or a policewoman when they were they were colleagues. I mean, there was no such, there were no barriers. There was no kind of, you know, special way to deal with a woman cop versus a male cop. And then uh, coming to the point of Sarpanch, I mean, I have people in my family who, I mean, so my wife's dadi was a Sarpanch of her village.
Oh,
And
nice.
I still, whenever I go to that village, I mean, people still tell me stories about that. So, and she was not the only Sarpanch. There have been few other women who've been Sarpanch after her. So I thought that was just, I wanted, you know, from the storytelling point of view, I wanted kind of this oracle-like figure.
Yeah, she did come
uh,
across like an oracle.
yeah, like an oracle-like figure, uh, but I didn't think that it would seem that odd. The
But what
police,
was the puncture
the
lady?
puncture lady, yes,
Did you write it in?
the puncture lady was a real life experience. We saw somebody who was like when we were kind of you know, scouting locations and kind of just traversing that whole transportation zone. We came across somebody who was doing that, and it was the same lady. It's that she does that for a
Uh,
living.
it felt like
Yeah,
she does it for real.
she does that for a living. So
Uh,
we just asked her, "Would you like to we're doing this film?" And she said, "Yeah, there was somebody who wanted to do a documentary, and like somebody, you know, are you
yeah.
from the same team?" And I was like, "No, no, no, we're not from the same team, but we'd just like you to be part of the film." And then it was not that character was not written in. It was something we saw there, and again, I should say, people around her did not make a big deal out of it.
Mhm,
Perhaps in the early days, perhaps when she was starting out, she did
mhm,
start out with her husband. Perhaps when she was starting out, people did raise some there were some eyebrows must have, you know, been raised,
yeah.
but over time it was, yeah, over time it kind of became normal. But yeah, I have a question. You know, we're talking about short films. You said short films you really enjoy. I was I'm very interested in uh, finding out how you learned cinema. Did you make short films before jumping into features? Is that where the love comes from? How are you so confident about
Actually, not
that form?
actually not particularly. See, basically, in my general years of when I was like very interested in cinema, that was time of when I would read a lot of. There was this website called passionforcinema.com, and that's where a lot of us used to hang out. A lot of the indie filmmakers today are actually thanks to that website.
Yeah.
And from there is when I actually started reading, and then I started writing on world cinema. And I wrote pieces which were not reviews, but although a little too pretentiously written, but they were about. I wanted to study them, so it was more like an exhaustive piece on just my own way of studying it. So there were a lot of films from around the world that I reviewed. And years later, when I actually came in, so my film school has been assisting Anurag Kashyap on Gangs of Wasseypur. And
Ah, okay. Wow.
yeah, so 2.5 years of my life went in that film, literally. Because from development to the final, and it was, I think, no, you couldn't have asked for a better film to assist because
Yeah.
it was at the juncture where people were transitioning from film to digital. So also that it was shot half on film and half on digital.
Hmm.
And it was all shot together in such an expanse. I actually learned everything over there. And then what I thought that, the same, I have a very academic and managerial sort of background before that. So immediately I thought that, okay, I've learned so much. Why shouldn't I put it into practice? Otherwise I'll forget it.
Hmm.
And during the post-production of Gangs of Wasseypur is when I made a short film called Shore. Okay,
Okay.
it was almost very guerrilla because it was shot in a train. A lot of very difficult to shoot that one. And when people saw that, it kind of won many awards abroad, and people really took notice of it.
Yeah.
And then then I made another short. Basically, you know what I mean. Why it attracts me a lot is that because um, uh, You can totally make what you want to make without, see, there is that inherent pressure no matter what you do when you make a feature. We cannot deny
Yes.
the fact that unless you're hardcore indie in the true sense of being indie, where you're self-financing, otherwise there are certain pressures, and there are legit and warranted pressures of having to make films where there is a certain budget constraint that you'll have to take care of. You'll have to make sure that you earn back what you can, and those are the pressures that you do go through. But with shorts, you don't, and that's why I really love that medium where
Yeah.
uh, I mean, you also made one short, which kind of was pretty famous.
It probably became famous after Soni, but the my film school was essentially also assisting filmmaker friends,
Yeah.
but realizing that I can do a better job.
I know.
So unfortunately, they were not very inspirational in that sense. I mean, we were I couldn't
Actually, I
believe
think
some of the things.
most of like when you're assisting, also, I think most of it is a lot of it is self-taught. I
Yeah,
mean, you take what you can. It's not like somebody's sitting down and explaining it to you. See, this is how you put a camera. This is what a 50 lens. It's not that. It's actually you have to, proactively
yes,
seek it out.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, but my short films are terrible. I don't show it to anybody because they were just they just never came out the way I wanted them to come out. I mean, the first one was just me and the cinematographer and a sound person and the actor. Uh, Everything like that. There was no lighting. There was nothing. I mean, we were just doing everything on our own, which was probably a good thing. Just
Mhm.
learning how things function on a set. Uh, just doing each role, even like the grips and light and uh, holding the boom sometimes or whatnot. And it was it was a great learning experience. But again, when I was trying to make I was trying to make like this very kind of like mystery and tension kind of film, and it turned out to be a comedy. I mean, almost like people were like laughing. It was like a Jaspal Bhatti thing, that they go out to make a horror film and they win the award for best comedy. So it was, and so it was something like that. The second one was slightly better than that, but again, I go back and I see those films. I mean, they were very, of course, they when you're uh, when you're learning, I mean, you have your influences in one film, you're trying to borrow from this filmmaker, in the next one, you're trying to borrow from this filmmaker. It's, it's just, it's a learning experience. But I learned films by actually making them, just realizing, okay, this is how I like to do it.
And
So
also, it's so reassuring to know that, I mean, you also, in a way, sort of critique your work way more than you should, because I do that constantly. And
oh
I can't look at my films again. Like I was like, please don't show me again. I want to kill myself. Like even the utterance of Masaan, and like somebody was like, can we sit and watch together? It's like, no, I'm not watching. You guys watch. I'm going away. So it's nice to know someone who's also like me, in the sense like you're constantly almost dissing your own work, aren't you? So
no, yeah, we have to, because I mean we know what we could have done better, and we remember that day. Oh my God! I mean,
oh
I
yeah,
was in such a bad mood that day, and
yeah,
this person showed up, things would have been so
showed
much
up.
better, or sometimes had this person not showed up, things would have been
Yeah,
so much better.
that is more actually. That is more than
Why
I
did
wish
this
I had
person
not.
show?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
It's
right.
great chatting with you, Ivan. Really, I mean, a lot of fun chatting with you, and also to know that it's such a similar world with both our films in a way. Actually, like both are workers in a system and trying to find their place. It and it felt so like
Yeah,
we were meant to talk.
yeah. You know, I when you're thinking of making a film, you're looking at filmmakers who've done it before you, and I must say, I mean, again, you're one of those that I am always looking forward to, whose work I'm always looking forward to, and I can't wait. I'm gonna look out for that second feature film whenever it comes out.
I'm gonna try.
And yeah, I mean, the way you are so comfortable working with such amazing actors and the way you direct them, I think I have to say, I mean, one of the most memorable performances from Konkana and Aditi, I think for a long, long time, people are going to talk about, you know, this film and talk about how they performed. And I think when they say when an actor does a good job, I think 50% of the credit goes to the director, of course.
I hear
Probably,
you.
yeah. I am always nervous. People ask me like, in your films, why don't we see familiar faces? And my answer to that is like, I'm always scared by them, familiar faces. I almost think that I'm going to be just looking at them all the time and thinking, wow, this is such an amazing actor. And, I'm going to be thinking back to their previous work. And so I have to learn that. I have to learn that from you. So, but anyways, great chatting. And thank you so much again for taking the time. Really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Arvind.